That was actually a good ad read. It's Thursday, July 29th. This is episode 173 of the Token CEO podcast. I'm Erika Nardini. We're presented by Sports Research. Beach season is here. It's practically August, which means that summer is almost over, which sucks. If you want to make the most of the rest of your summer, Sports Research can help you. They've got collagen, which I love. They've got vitamins. They've got an at-home workout kit. They've got this little thing called Sweet Sweat, which helps you leave your workout dripping in sweat and helps you warm up faster, recover better, lose all the fat around your trouble areas, all that good stuff. If you go to sportsresearch.com and use code Erika, you can get 25% off at checkout. Here's what we've got going on today. We've got headlines coming out of the Barstool world. We're going to talk about the Barstool management training, common questions, and what our responses were. We have a fantastic interview with a woman named Karsen Woods. And then as always, we will do our adulting segment. So that's what we've got going on today. Our big news from yesterday, Dave and I were in Tucson, Arizona. We had Eddie there. We had Spider running around doing Spider things. It was awesome. So we announced yesterday that we will be the title sponsor of the Arizona Bowl. And in addition to being a title sponsor, we will broadcast the game. What we're going to do is essentially create a 4-day activation in Tucson. We'll do Rough and Rowdy if we can. We'll have a pup punk concert. We'll bring the classic to life. We'll do a pizza crawl. We could do a hot dog crawl with Frank. We've talked about a billion different add-ons to the game itself. Can the coin toss turn into a hot dog contest? Can we toss Big Cat out of a plane? Can he do that and sing the national anthem? In all seriousness, Dave at the middle of the press conference was like, Big Cat's been thrown out of a plane before. Like, he's very open to it. So we have 1,000 ideas for how we can bring this experience to life. Tucson was amazing. I'd never been to Tucson. Dave had never been to Tucson. It's beautiful. It's like a college town. It has an Austin vibe, kind of before Austin became commercial. So ton of graffiti, ton of different bars, sandwich shops, young people everywhere, cactuses, cactuses galore. And the best part was the Arizona Bowl folks took a huge bet on us. They have a director. Her name is Kim. She's been fantastic. Their entire team has been so all in on doing something for the community. They're a charity. So everything that we're going to do around the Arizona Bowl helps support the Tucson community. And they've been so open and so willing to bring new fans to a game. This game will be between a MAC team and a Mountain West team. So I think the Arizona people are fired up. The Tucson people are fired up. The MAC is fired up and Mountain West is fired up. So, and most of all, we're excited to bring this to life. I think the little secret in sports is when you really break down a sports broadcast, it's all the same production companies. ESPN outsources to the same people as CBS, who outsource to the same people as Fox. There's no reason we can't outsource to that same cast of characters. What's different about Barstool is the way we think about covering the game, the way we bring fans and involve people with the game, and then all of the things that we can create around and outside of the game. So we're excited. We're excited to have the sports book there and make this really work and come to life for Penn. And then most of all, we want to showcase a great football game and bring some life and energy on New Year's Eve to Tucson, Arizona. So that's the Arizona Bowl. Speaking of broadcast, let's just talk quickly about the Tokyo Olympics. So the Olympics viewership way down from 2016, but streaming is up substantially for NBC. NBC's big bet is Peacock. So NBC has to make Peacock work for NBC to be successful in the long run. What's interesting is they're trying to take a broadcast event and make it a streaming event. There's a lot of discussion around this. I actually think it's interesting because the Olympics has always been it always has been about television. Like television, McDonald's, Coca-Cola, and the Olympics are like the 4 staples of the Olympics. And what's interesting about television is you can understand the schedule. You can see the games. If you turn on NBC, there's most likely going to be Olympics coverage. What's going to be in prime time. You see the medal counts. What's interesting about Peacock, and I'm also seeing this with the WWE, is NBC is trying to figure out how to take broadcast events and make them work in streaming. And what's different about making things work in streaming is search really matters. Like one of my biggest frustrations with WWE is if you search on Peacock for WWE content, it's a fucking pain in the ass. Like it's difficult to find. Same thing with the Olympics. Like it's hard to find specific sporting events. So it's interesting to see as NBC thinks about taking things that they've been the best at, they're the gold standard for, trying to make those things work in a new environment and on a new platform is very difficult. I also think, one of the biggest issues, which is an understandable issue, we face this, we'll face it, and they're obviously operating at a scale which is magnitudes larger than ours, is just the stream quality, the technical quality, the viewing experience. That's something that NBC, I think, still is trying to figure out. I think there's a lot of pressure on them from fans. And certainly if they can't figure out how to make a great viewing experience and then how to make that viewing experience navigatable and feel authentic and unique to a streaming environment, I think it's going to be hard for them to retain viewers and get those viewers to pay over the long term. Next up is Snapchat. So Snapchat is crushing their earnings. They beat expectations by 116%, over $100 million. They are expecting this Q3 to have their first quarter at over $1 billion. Shares rose dramatically after their earnings call, 17% on Thursday. By Friday morning, shares are up 25%. I think this indicates a couple things. One is ad dollars are back. Two is that the market is looking to invest in new media platforms and new platforms in general. It's funny, 4 years ago, there was an NYU Stern professor who said that investing in Snap was like driving drunk. Maybe that was true back then, but those drunk drivers are very happy right now. I also think, one of the things that's just so funny about new media is I'm not sure when I look at Snapchat from a consumer perspective that I'm seeing anything dramatic. Like TikTok is far more interesting, far more viral, far more compelling from a content perspective. When you look at the BD deals happening, I don't see Snapchat really playing in that space. I do think it's interesting that their idea of paying for exclusive content and having that content live and discover, that whole notion is gone. And essentially, Snapchat is going to become a mall of content the way you would find a mall of content on Instagram or on Twitter or really anywhere. So it's interesting to see the market rewarding Snapchat. Obviously, Rich Greenfield talks about Snapchat all the time. I don't see it as a partner, to be honest with you. Like Snapchat's a little bit of an afterthought for us. Certainly, like we love our shows on there. I think our shows are very successful, but Snapchat isn't at the forefront when we think about creation the way, let's say, TikTok is. And it's not woven into our DNA the way, let's say, Twitter is. The thing with that, though, is TikTok is still so nascent. So there's, a lot of runway there. And Twitter, you just don't see a whole lot of innovation. And I don't know, is it because their audience wants Twitter to be Twitter? I don't know, but interesting to see the market rewarding TikTok so enthusiastically. Big news today is that Robinhood IPOs. So they've been on their roadshow. They're giving big presentation to financial institutions like Fidelity or big hedge fund managers to hype up Robinhood. Their mission, as you may recall, is to democratize investing. They're selling as much as 35% of their shares, or $770 million worth of shares, directly to customers on their app. I will probably buy some Robinhood shares. Well, I think what's most interesting about the IPO is that when companies historically have IPO'd, they save 1% to 2% of their shares for customers. Robinhood is saving 35% of its shares to go direct to consumers. So fans of Robinhood, consumers of Robinhood, people who trade with Robinhood will be able to buy their shares directly on Robinhood. It'll be interesting to see how this plays out today. Who knows if the tech will hold up, but I love the idea because it's tied in directly with Robinhood's mission, which is to democratize investing. I think when Robinhood has had its greatest troubles, which is obviously what we saw with GameStop and AMC, it's when they move away from democratizing investing. So this is great to see them do something quite innovative in giving their fans and the users of their product a chance to own the company directly. Last headline, big article in the New York Times this week about the generational gap on who returns to work. I was actually having this conversation at the Arizona Bowl yesterday, which is what the New York Times article essentially said is that older workers, so boomers, want to go back to work, and the Gen Zers and the millennials do not want to go back to work. I actually don't think this norm is true at Barstool. I think the people who are most passionate about this company, who are most engaged in their job, who are most excited about this place being a shortcut for their career, all those folks are back to work. I think what I love about Barstool actually is that the people in the most differentiated jobs want to be back at work. My observation is that people in the most commoditized jobs do not want to be back at work. I think that's dangerous in general. I think, my personal bias, and I probably fit in closer to the boomer gang, is that if you want to have a very fast moving, very disruptive, very forward company, it's hard to make that shit happen over Zoom. It's just not going to happen over Zoom. You got to be in person. You have to be connected. You have to be working collaboratively. You have to be able to have speed and connection across your organization. Otherwise, it's impossible to break things and to move as quickly as you want to. If you're at a company that's all about the status quo, zooming it in is a no-brainer. But what's interesting to see is that the demands on returning to work are really varying by industry. Financial industry, they want people back in the cubes. Big tech companies, they're like, you can work from home forever. Media companies are also not requiring people to go back to work the way, let's say, the NBC isn't requiring people to go back to work, or CBS or Viacom, the way a Morgan Stanley or a JP Morgan is. That actually makes me excited, because I think the fact that we are back at work and that, thankfully most people here want to be back at work, that's only going to give us more advantage, because those companies are going to slow down while we're just speeding up. One piece about this is that the older generations are waving promotion, career advancement, success, good reviews. They're predicating all of those things on being back at work. I understand this. I think that's pretty natural. I also think that when you're talking to a 22-year-old who isn't bought into your company's mission, has 4 other job offers, and kind of wants to just float along at work, that person is like, I don't give a shit about the promotion schedule. I just want an easy life. I want to work as little as possible and as conveniently as possible. And they know, she knows she's going to get paid for it. So I think the interesting thing about the tension about returning to work is it's happening at the same time as a workforce shortage. So the boomers are going to have to become more flexible to let people work where and how they want. The millennials and the Gen Zs, which are in the highest demand in the workforce, they're only going to have more options. What I would say overall to this is that if your company doesn't have a cool factor, doesn't have a brand, doesn't stand for something, doesn't have a mission that its employees can buy into, you're going to have to become more accommodating and more flexible about where and how people work. Otherwise, you will not be able to fill jobs. That wraps us up for our headlines. Our headlines are brought to you by Ad Results Media. So Ad Results Media knows that over 100 million Americans listen to podcasts every single month. If you are a brand and you're thinking about advertising in the podcast space, you're not alone. People are doing it. Hopefully, there are lots of ads across the Barstool Sports network. Ad Results Media, as most people know, is one of our best partners. They're also one of the world's leading audio and podcast advertising agencies. They help everyone from startups to Fortune 500 brands do podcast advertising right. They do this well because they have 20 years of inside knowledge, and they have a tested strategy to help your brand succeed. If you want an experienced partner who can help bring your brand to life in podcasting, look no further than Ad Results. You can go to adresultsmedia.com/token. That's adresultsmedia.com/token. Be part of the story. All right, so let's transition into Barstool's manager training and just the management section of this podcast. So we had management training at Barstool last week. One of my biggest observations at Barstool, and just one of my biggest learnings from my own career, is that people do not leave jobs. They don't leave companies. What people leave are managers. And if you have a great manager And having a great manager doesn't mean an easy manager. It doesn't mean a friendly manager. It means a manager that helps make you better at your job. If you don't have a great manager, if your manager is petty, if your manager doesn't have vision, if your manager is just a shithead, if your manager is disorganized, if your manager is lazy, if your manager is not a good communicator, people tend to not stay in those jobs. When you look at attrition in companies, you can very, very quickly recognize patterns. Good managers retain great people, and great people often become good managers. But in order to be a good manager, I think everybody needs help, and everyone can benefit from a little bit of training and a little bit of know-how. So we did manager training. We've done it the last 2 weeks at Barstool. I think most everyone who's a manager here did it. I did it. A lot of the management team did it. I felt like it was really valuable. Interesting themes for us were, I think one of the hardest things for managers is how do you onboard somebody and how do you offboard somebody? So how do you make it easy and seamless to bring someone into your team? And then if someone quits or you fire them, how do you get them out of there easily and seamlessly? I think hiring people is a hard job. It's exhausting. You have to put a lot of effort into it. And then the hard thing about bringing a new person onto your team, especially if you're a new manager, is it takes a lot of work. You have to be very organized. You have to be thoughtful and proactive. You also have to slow down and make time to make that person successful. I struggle with that. And then the same is true when someone leaves your team, which is you've got to figure out a way that it doesn't disrupt everyone else on your team. And you have to find a way to have that person exit without creating chaos. So that was a big theme for us. We as a company, I think, are trying to do a better job of building systems for this. You'd be surprised at the lack of technology. And I think the lack of systems and process. People probably aren't surprised at that about us, but we're trying to get better at that. The second big theme is handling sensitive feedback in emotional situations. I think this is true for managers of all and any ages. It is hard to have emotional conversations in life, let alone at work. And handling sensitive feedback, I think, is one of the biggest gifts of management training. It's also one of the things that I think we most avoid in management because it's difficult and it's uncomfortable. And then the last big theme for us is the creation of new opportunities. So creating development opportunities to set the infrastructure for people to grow in their career. So how do you lay out a gauntlet for somebody to run? When somebody runs that gauntlet, how do you reward them? How do you motivate people who've kind of fallen along the wayside along the way? So those are the three big things that we talked about. Big question here was, what do you do when an employee starts crying in a meeting? You may laugh at this question. This was the number one question. I think this is probably a very, very common question. Doesn't matter what company you're in. So how did we answer it? I think when an employee starts crying, you manage someone, they start crying in your conversation. Everybody cries at Barstool Sports. So this happens all the time for us. I think what you have to recognize is that this is an emotional reaction. Whatever that person is reacting to has been built up over time. It's emotional, it's bothering them, it's overwhelming. And the most important thing that you can do when this happens is to just acknowledge in your head as a manager that, like, okay, there's something really big going on here. It may be the problem at work. It may have nothing to do with work. It may be deeper than that person is indicating. It may be related to something else entirely. The biggest thing that I think a manager can do is resist the urge to activate and solve the problem right that second. I think the second big mistake is assuming you know how to make that person's problem go away, or that you know how to make that person feel better. So communication here, sensitivity here, super important. Biggest thing you can ask as a manager is, hey, do you need a moment? Do you want to go for a walk? Do you want to take a break and come back to this conversation later? I think if you're a manager, it's a very good idea to have Kleenex in your office. I always try to remember to have Kleenex in the office, whether I'm crying or somebody else is crying. You can't go ahead and just hug someone these days. So you can ask if someone wants a hug, but don't just go out and try to manhandle the person. And then I think the biggest thing is to make sure that if you're having an emotional conversation with an employee, that you do come back to it at a later point in time when things are less less emotional. And that's when you try to solve the problem. Okay, so the second one is, let's just talk about giving feedback, right? Feedback, Joanne Bradford's favorite expression of all time, feedback is a gift. Feedback can also be hard to give. We're in the middle of our mid-year review cycle here at Barstool. So feedback is really important as part of this cycle. The biggest thing I would say for a manager having a mid-year review or getting ready to give feedback is you need to get organized, right? You can't, it's disrespectful to your employee to give them a bunch of feedback that's all over the place, perhaps factually incorrect, perhaps things that they've already addressed. And you need to be sure that you're keeping track of it so that when you get to the end of the year and you say, hey, I gave you this positive feedback, I gave you this, constructive feedback, and I gave you 4 things to work on, you need to be able to go back to what those things were. So, my thing on giving feedback is I always try to start with the positive. And I think most good managers or managers in general start with the positive. Here are the things you're doing great. Here's what's going really, really well. The second piece is really important. It's what the employee wants to know. It's what the employee is afraid of. It's what they're most defensive about. And as a manager, it's what you're most uncomfortable to say. So the second piece of it is, hey, what are the things you need to work on? The biggest thing is just to be clear and direct. Don't bullshit your way around stuff. Don't use a bunch of fluffy words that don't mean things. Be very, very, very specific. It drives me nuts when people give feedback and it's like obtuse feedback. I'm like, what the fuck are you saying? You really want to give feedback in a way that someone can understand what you're saying. So, I'll give you an example. Like we had a situation here where we had someone in a high up position who wasn't doing a great job of communicating things down to that person's team. And so the feedback in that case was, hey, one thing that you can work on is finding a way to communicate most consistently about things that matter to multiple people on your team. The observation, use example number 1, example number 2, example number 3. In this case, we gave specific examples of here's 3 instances where this could have happened better. I think using words like this could have been better versus that sucked is always better to hear. I think sometimes it depends how emotionally charged and frustrated you are as a manager. But I think wherever and however possible, the more calm you can be in constructive feedback, the better it is. So in this case, it was, hey, here's 3 instances where things could have gone better if communication was handled differently. And then the last thing that I think is important is don't solve the problem for your employee. You can give suggestions, which would be, hey, this is something you might think about for the future. I'd love to see when you've implemented this. Or you may have, here's 2 ideas for how you could solve this. You may have 5 others. I'd love to see it when you put this all together. Be sure that if you're giving constructive feedback, that you give a parameter around it and you give a product or a result that you want to see. Because otherwise, if the employee works hard on something, it may not be what you're looking for, and that will create friction and frustration at future reviews. A lot of our managers have big teams. A lot of our managers know that we're not promoting everyone on the team every year, right? So there's a scarcity to the bonuses. There's a scarcity to the promotions. And I think the best managers at Barstool or other companies really help their teams understand, hey, the best people, the people who shine, are going to get the most opportunities. The best people, the people that shine, are going to get the most financial reward. I think the other important thing is to really make sure that you are helping your team to have that group be as competitive as possible in a healthy, positive way, but as competitive as possible. And also to understand that there are different ways to succeed and different ways to shine. So thinking about this, I think the biggest thing in a manager-employee relationship is you have to respect each other. The employee needs to respect, hey, this person is my boss. I need to be respectful. I need to understand their authority. I need to work within the parameters of this role within this company. And then I think a manager needs to respect people and needs to respect, where is this person coming from? What are their strengths? What are their areas for development? how could that manager make them most successful? Who are the people they could connect them to? I think one of the things that sometimes managers get wrong is they think they have to be everything and anything for the employee, when in reality, the more you connect people to other people, the better off you are. And the better off your employee is going to be. And I think as a manager, you should be looking to create people who are as strong or more strong than you, because if you can do that, you as a manager will grow in your position and your authority and your role. Speaking of growing your career, Top Resume is the world's #1 authority on resume writing. Everybody needs a good resume. Doesn't matter who you are, how low you are on the totem pole, how high you are on the totem pole. Recruiters and hiring managers are these days relying on tech solutions to scan resumes. So you think that there's a human being looking at your resume. There is not. There's a computer looking to pick up keywords about what you do and matching those keywords to the job that that person is looking to fill. Top Resume knows this and they know how to manage this. So in the same way that we think about making content that's discoverable on Instagram or searchable on Google, you got to think about your resume the same way. What Top Resume does is they provide more than just spell checks and typos. They give you a comprehensive review of your resume. They help make sure those keywords are in there. They give you a personalized recommendation for how to make your resume strong. Go to topresume.com/token to get a free resume review. It's as simple as uploading your resume to their site. You'll get a free evaluation, and then you'll get expert advice on how to make your resume stronger. The best part is that anyone who listens to this podcast is getting 15% off Top Resume's professional writing services. Go to topresume.com/token today, not only for your comprehensive review, but 15% off their resume writing services. Okay, Karsen Woods. Karsen Woods is a ballsy woman. Her interview is next. She is an NFT queen. She's the chief experience officer at an emerging digital art marketplace called 888 The New World. She's also a co-founder and partner at the crypto media incubator Triptych. She is a self-proclaimed disruptor. I loved her not because she's a disruptor in the NFT space, but because she's a woman who gave it all up, moved all the way across the country, recognized what she was missing in where she lived. She's a Vermonter. Who doesn't love a Vermonter? But what she recognized, she wanted to be part of a bigger world. And what she's done with her role at 888 The New World and what she's doing around NFTs is she's really become an evangelist for why NFTs, why blockchain, why cryptocurrency is going to democratize and change everything from how we go to events, how we experience community, how we think about art, how we get art. So this is Karsen. Where in Vermont are you from?
I'm from Chittenden County, so like the Burlington area. Yeah, and I moved to LA on March 30th. I left Vermont for the first time. I quit my job. I'm sure we can talk about it now or talk about it later.
But
okay, cool. I was I was employee number 3 at a animation studio startup based in Burlington called Super Plastic. Had been there for almost 3 years. It was my first job out of college. And a series of events happened which got me into like the NFT space. And I just had this whisper in the back of my head that was like, you should quit your job, until it became like insufferable and just like more of like a forever like scream. And I walked into work on a Monday and quit my job. And 10 days later, moved from Vermont to LA for the first time in my life with no job, no apartment, nothing.
And Karsen, what'd you tell yourself to keep yourself going? Like, how'd you, because that's ballsy. How did you stay, like, I'm sure you had so much self-doubt and like, oh shit, am I doing the right thing? And fuck, can I go back? Which like nobody wants to go back to Vermont. No. But like, what was the narrative you told yourself in that process?
I think it was just like about survival. And it was just like, I don't have another choice. Like, this is like where I'm not going to turn back. Like, I got rid of my apartment in Vermont. Like, I sold all my stuff. Like, I shipped my car here. I was like, there's literally no other option but to like be successful here. And I was like, I don't care what the fuck I have to do to like, I mean, I probably draw the line at a few places,
Yeah,
but
but
I
not
was,
many.
yeah, not many. But I was kind of just like, this is what's happening. And there's no other option. And like, I am never somebody that's like afraid of the work. Like, whether it's an idea in business or in strategies or like in my life, I'm like, if I want to do something, I'm gonna just do it. And I don't care how hard it is to get there, how much work it's gonna take. Like, there's no alternative. Like,
Yep.
the way out is through.
Yep. Yep. That's what we should call this episode. The way out is through. All right.
Ooh.
So Karsen, tell us, I was on a plane yesterday with a bunch of private equity guys, and they were like, "Oh, we don't get this NFT space. Like, what is blockchain?" And I'm like, "God, of all people, you people should be getting this." So, explain to the uninitiated. You are a self-professed leader of this renaissance. You think that artists are going to create value in blockchain and I would say virtual environments, but explain it to the uninitiated.
Okay. Well, I think just to touch on like that point of artists, like I think right now the art industry is like a great, like it's going to create a great use case and like case study for other industries to come into this. I think that really what NFTs are, a lot of times people are like, well, what is an NFT? Like, what's an NFT? And for me, like, and what I try to explain to people is that an NFT is not really the what, it's a how. Like anything can be an NFT, but what the NFT does is it just verifies ownership of an authenticated digital asset. Anything can be a digital asset. Right now, like the most popular kind of utilization of this is art, is like this crypto art and media. But I think, really like thinking about just even like going to a car dealership and buying a car, like that exchange is happening. You are walking in, you're entering into partnership with a dealership, you make the purchase, that goes in like the files or the data system or whatever of the bank. Like that bank is centralized, but that still, like that exchange, that sale is still taking place, and there's still an institution that's like keeping record of that and facilitating that sale. It's exactly like the same kind of methodology. It's just happening in this decentralized way. So that sale, if that's between you and I, and even if we're talking about someday in the future selling a car, like me verifying my ownership of the car and you verifying that you are the buyer of that car, and it's immutable, it's like undeniable, and it's kind of concrete in that way, and it's decentralized. So there's no reason, nobody has any interest in like lying about it or taking advantage or like taking these hidden fees or whatever. Like it's just that sale is taking place. So an NFT provides that type of technology. So that's the how.
Yeah, that's a great way to describe it. What industries do you think will come after art? Like to me, I see it, there's really art, there's culture and sports, right? Like culture and sports are kind of following. Like how far do you think this goes, and what would your hypothesis be on that?
Oh my gosh. Well, I think my hope is that it goes all the way. I honestly believe that, we're still going to have institutions. We're still going to have like centralized corporations and structures put in place, and that's okay too. But I hope that in every industry, in business, in retail, in sales, that we find a way to integrate this type of technology, because ultimately, like, there's not really any reason not to. I think art right now, and like you said, sports and culture, like there's this new wave, like this new evolution of pop culture, which is crypto culture. And this is something that like I'm always talking about. Like I'm obsessed with pop culture. I think it's so like it's supposed to be a study of like the people in like its most kind of simple definition. But really, pop culture is the influence over the people. It like influences us on deciding like what we're gonna wear and what we're gonna watch on TV.
Yeah,
And
what's
even
cool.
all
Yep.
the way, yeah, and even all the way to like it's really influencing how we behave in like times of like massive kind of panic or chaos, like in a pandemic or in like a really polarizing presidential election. that is what pop culture is. It's that influence. And I think what crypto culture is that's different from that is like the people actually influencing the culture and the people finding ways to influence, like, this is what we want. Like, we want to see more of this. We want to be more engaged and participate. I just feel that right now, like, NFTs are looked at, again, it's kind of back to people are like, what can be an NFT? But NFTs can be implemented into like a marketing strategy, the same way that Space Jam just released 91,000 NFTs to celebrate kind of the release of the movie. And it can also be used as like the primary medium. Like, they just announced that the first feature film will be released as an NFT. Like, there's so much to do. Like, it's really like the blockchain itself is just kind of this open transaction ledger and system that is always waiting for like the next change agent, or like,
and it's not prescriptive. It can take anything. So when you think about crypto culture, like, describe crypto culture. Like, who is the Angelina Jolie and the Brad Pitt and the Jennifer Aniston of crypto culture? Who's People Magazine versus Us Weekly? Like, describe the world from your opinion.
Well, oh my God, that's so fun. I love that question. I think it's still so early to say, but there's always going to be like leaders and real like champions in these spaces. And like, I think people that, other people will look up to. Like, when you think about, I do a lot of like manifesting like stuff, and I always think about expanders. Like, expanders are people where you see them in positions like you're an expander. It's like you like understanding the story and the background and the path that somebody took to get to a place makes it easier for you to understand, like, this could be me too. Like, that's a possibility. And I think the same goes for like Jen Aniston and Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie. Like, looking at these artists and where they're taking their lives, and even not even artists, just like people, there's this game called Axie Infinity. And in the game, you can actually, it's a play to earn game. So you can play the game and earn NFTs that you can then sell for the Axie coin. And it's giving people an opportunity to make like $10 to $20 a day. Like, for me, that is something where I'm like, okay, that's just maybe an added bonus, but I'm not really batting an eye at it. But people in the Philippines that are playing that, like, that's not play to earn, like, that's play to live.
Yeah.
That's creating that opportunity. And I feel like that's really, crypto culture is like the opportunity for individual wealth and to promote and support like communal bonding, which really pop culture is too, because as somebody, if you're like a musician, a rapper, a pop artist, or an actor, or an athlete, like, your opportunity to go and create wealth, to build an income based on this passion or this talent of yours actually contributes to like a greater communal bond and experience, which is so awesome. So that's really like just where I see it. But I don't know. Am I the Angelina Jolie of crypto?
I was going to say, let's go. Let's go. What are you doing?
Why not? I want to be the
Own it. Who would Elon Musk be? I feel like Elon Musk is like, who would Elon Musk be?
I don't know. Somebody that's like always like, he like might be like a Justin Bieber of crypto, where it's like, okay, like, we're trying to like you, like, stop being problematic. Like,
I'm with you. I was thinking like Nicolas Cage, where you're like, oh fuck, he's in another movie. You know what I mean? Like, here he is again.
Oh my God, poor Nick Cage.
Okay, this will be kind of funny.
National Treasure is like honestly one of my favorite hangover movies.
Oh, really? Okay. I'm not a Nicolas Cage fan though. That's a funny comparison though. Or it would be, or like Johnny Depp. He could maybe be Johnny Depp, just less well accessorized.
Like, you're great, and like, it's hard to deny your accomplishments, but like, please stop being problematic.
Yeah, like, that's right. Like, don't braid the goatee quite so much, just quite so much. Okay, so all right, keep talking to me about this. I love this. I think that one of the things that's so cool right now is that there is such, everybody talks about like how the internet democratized things, and I actually think one of the biggest takeaways from the pandemic, one of the biggest accelerants was just the idea, this empowerment of your average guy or girl. Like, if you're smart, you understand the internet, you are well off enough to have access to it, right? Like, kind of interesting going back to the Vermont thing. Like, I spent a lot of time growing up in Vermont, and I was talking to my brother last weekend about just access to wireless, right? Like, access to the grid is in the world going to be one of, if not the biggest arbiter of how big your potential can be. But I think the thing that I love about what you're saying is that if you're crafty, you don't have to go to Stanford Business School. You don't have to get a job at the private equity firm. You don't have to buy into somebody's bullshit mantra of a career. There's so much that can happen right now, whether it's like, hey, you're a pretty girl, you want to sell pictures on OnlyFans and make $50,000 a month, like, power to you. You want to go create, we have a guy who used to work here who's selling art as NFTs, like probably making a better living than he did at Barstool Sports. So how do you think, like, how does that, for people, people your age, like, do you agree with that? And how does that manifest in how you think about community? Like, I feel like you guys are so solitary, you're so empowered, so you're very in control. And then the idea of community is so big.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, a couple of questions there. Like, let me see what I think. If I can just like touch on first, like people kind of creating their own path and mission. Like, when I feel like we've seen a couple different waves. Like, I'm a millennial. I was born in '95. Like, younger millennial. I'm 26. I feel like for me, I always grew up with like, I have to go to college. Like, and it kind of was like, my mom is amazing, and she went back to school as a single mother, like finished her bachelor's, finished her master's, like incredible. And I saw that in the narrative to me was like, she was like, you don't want to be doing this when you're a mom. Like, go have this experience, like
get
go
this done in your late teens.
And get a job. But I remember being like, well, what the fuck am I gonna study? Like, that's like I want to make money. Like, I want to run shit. I want to make like doctor's salary, but I can't pass an anatomy and physiology test to save my fucking life because that's just how I am. But to me, like, the fact that there was an opportunity to study something like communication, like that was my major was communication and women's and gender studies. Women's and gender studies came like after, because I was like, I didn't even know that existed. But for me, I was kind of like, well, I'm studying, like I'm paying somebody to like teach me about something that I'm already pretty good at and I already know how to do. But to me, like I thought, okay, if I just need that piece of paper, that's fine. But then being in Vermont and actually applying to jobs in like event marketing and PR, like I didn't stand a chance. Like, no. I did not stand out at all in the job pool. And not because I wasn't good enough, but because on paper, like my internships were at they weren't at these like sexy places.
Totally.
Like, yeah. Kids that were like, and I like that to me, like if nobody knows about like where the hell I'm interning, like Highline Lodge in Killington, Vermont, like yeah. How is that going to help me? So that was really upsetting. And I feel like a lot of people probably feel that way. And so now like we're kind of like rejecting, like we're taking this turn and being like, you know what, like we're not gonna like we're not in control of like what type of all the time, like what type of opportunity we can create for ourselves at 18, 19, 20. So now like we're 25, 26, 27, and we're gonna say like, actually we're creating it ourselves. Like we're over this shit, like this kind of corporate model. Like, you want to hire somebody in an entry level position, but they have to have 3 years of work experience. Like, how is that possible? And I got my job at Superplastic because they were hiring for a director of marketing, and I wrote an embellished cover letter and lied about my experience. And because I literally was like, no fucks given at that point.
Yeah, you're like, I'll do anything to get this job.
I had nothing left to lose. And I was like, what can get somebody's attention? Now for me, like that worked out because the story that I told was exactly what Superplastic, like many months later, like telling stories and like rooting stories in the real world and making them just convincing enough. But I think that is a big piece of it, is kind of us saying we're going to start to define now, like how we actually want to operate and infiltrate like a professional and corporate world.
Yeah.
And then, you know, to that, the next note of community is like, because we kind of all, I think, grew up with relatively similar like messaging and kind of, you know, this like expectation imposed by our parents. I feel that, you know, we're now creating community in a different way where we're on this like playing field, and our goal isn't necessarily like equality, because equality can't really be achieved without first acknowledging how things have been inequitable. And we need to like, which means we need to like, if you think about a playing field, you kind of need to lift it up for the people that have been, you know, at a like have been traditionally marginalized or have been overlooked, you know, whether you're somebody that's trying to enter a like fast paced, like sexy marketing and PR field from Vermont, or you're a woman, or you're somebody that's not even from the United States. Like there's so many things. And I feel that really how community has been being built is like this pyramid approach. So like the brand or the company is at the top, and then you have, you know, your investors and your biggest spenders and all of that, like they're at this top line, and then you've got influencers that engage with your brand, and then all the way down to like the people on the bottom line are the people who are like super active on your, like always commenting on your socials, they're in your chat rooms, they're on your Discord, all of that. And those are the people that really do the most work, because if they love and are obsessed with your brand, they're going to tell everybody about it. So I feel that like what I really am trying to create, what I see happening, especially in the NFT space, is that it's actually now this flat road, and the brand, or, you know, the talent, the artist is driving this bus and picking people up along the way and bringing everybody where they need to go.
And everyone's on that same field.
Exactly. And that's where it's about. Like, that's what it's about. Like, how can you meet everybody where they're at and take them to lead?
I love that, Karsen. It's so funny. You're like bringing me back. I grew up in New Hampshire, and same, like my internship sucked. I worked at like Weirs Beach Water Slide, and I was a bus girl at the pier, and then I got like a free internship at like the local dial-up company because I'm about 100 years older than you. And it made me feel so insecure in getting to corporate America, because I was like trying so hard. I worked my fucking ass off in all those internships. I crushed them, but they weren't going to stand out ever. It didn't matter how smart I was, how helpful I was, how dedicated I was. It was impossible to break through. And so in my career, I had to jump a lot. I was always jumping because I was trying to break up the pyramid, right? Which is very hard to scale something that goes uphill and get smaller and tighter as you go. And I love what you have to say. Like, I think the word infiltrate is such a great word. I think the energy you're bringing to a platform that is, you know, decentralized, undefined by intention and design. And also what you've done, I think, in your life, which is, you know, you broke out of someplace pretty safe. You could have crushed it in Burlington, Vermont. Like, I'm sure like there's 100 versions of you with like 2 kids, you know, like doing a little this, doing that. Like, I think the idea of trying to be a revolutionary around the internet, around blockchain, in your case, around NFTs, is really inspiring. And I'm just so appreciative you came on. I love your story. Like, I'm a huge fan. Karsen, tell people how they can find you.
You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Karsen Daily, KarsenDaily. Mostly there. Sometimes I'm still popping in and out of Clubhouse and other places. But yeah, I'm around, and my DMs are always open. I want to talk to people about NFTs and decentralization, and I want to spread the word as much as possible and bring more people into this, especially women, especially millennial women. Like, let's go. It's time. This is our time.
I love it. All right, Karsen, thank you so much. We'll see you later.
Cool.
This was awesome. Great job. This was great. Thank you.
Great. Bye.
It's Thursday, perfect day of the week for High Noon. High Noon is a hard seltzer made with real vodka, real juice, and sparkling water. They have their tropical 8-pack out now. You can get mango and passion fruit. You can get my favorite peach. You can also get watermelon and pineapple. All flavors are available in 4-packs. They have an 8-pack variety pack. Who doesn't love a little variety? Only 100 calories, gluten-free, and no added sugar. All right, so High Noon brings to you our adulting segment. So the adulting question this week is, when do you let your boss or manager know that you're looking for a new job? Personally, my answer on this is never. If you're looking for a new job, you don't want to risk not having your current job. I would not tell your manager that you're out looking for jobs. That may sound counterintuitive, but here's the risk. If you're out looking for a new job and you don't get that job, and you tell your manager you don't want to work at that job, which is essentially what you're saying if you're saying you're looking for a new job, you run a huge risk about your security and your position in your current company. I think it's super appropriate to let your manager know if you're unhappy in your job. I think it's very respectful to let your manager know, hey, if I don't get this thing, this thing, this thing, I'm going to have to look for a new job. I think that kind of communication is great and super proactive, and probably will be respected and appreciated by your manager. But I think if you're out looking for a job, the only time you tell your company about that is when you have a job offer. And the reason is, if you don't ultimately get that job, you still need to have your current job. That's your paycheck, that's your benefits, that's your salary. And so I think it's too disruptive. I think it's premature to let your manager know that you're looking for a job, frankly, before you have a job. That's it for today's episode. If you haven't already, leave us a review, give us a rating, or subscribe to the podcast. We are answering voicemails for Tuesday. You can call us at 440-462-1729 with questions related to work or any wanted advice. You can also give us advice. You can watch this episode along with many others on our YouTube channel. Just search Token CEO. I'm at EKA Nardini. Token CEO is on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, and YouTube. See you Tuesday.